decided that I wanted to do the artist series on here. You were like one of the first persons like I wanted to talk to. Like
Awesome.
definitely because within like the space of film and theater, that you don't see a lot of black creatives as like costume designers or set designers or production designers. A lot of people don't even know what like production designer is.
Right, right.
So I
I
definitely
did
wanted to
for a
like
while.
get your take on that. So
Okay.
yeah, so I guess we could just start with what do you do and how did you get into that field?
So as you know, my name is Alicia DeLarge. I consider myself a production designer and a set designer. So my first love is set design, to be honest. I really love creating environments in general. So any type of environment that's needed, I'm able to create that from scratch. So how did I start? I really started with, I would say, locations and like my love for furniture, right?
Right.
So growing up, I was the only cousin that would go to the thrift store with my grandma. I was the only cousin that would reupholster furniture with my grandma. I really learned mostly everything I know about vintage furniture and things like that from her. Um, and once I got a little older, I started to get into locations. So really through Instagram is kind of how I started. Like I would start just wandering the city as I usually do and coming up on different locations, and I would just post them, like take a picture of them and post them. And I had a lot
Right.
of friends that were at the time starting their own brands, starting their own clothing lines or product lines of different sorts, and they would call me like, "Yo, Alicia, where was that? Or where was you at? Or what was that?" And so then I started to think like, "Ooh, I could really probably make money off of, you know what I mean? Like really helping
Yeah.
people find locations because they don't have the time, or
Right.
they don't take the time to, go find these things. So
Right.
so yeah, so that's kind of how I started. I started off doing location scouting and management. So location scouting is pretty self-explanatory. You go out, you find a location for a given shoot, film, commercial, whatever it may be. Um, and then you basically manage the location. So you negotiate different contracts with the owners. You kind of are the middleman between the owner of the establishment and the producer or the director or whoever you're working for.
Right.
Sometimes it involves going to City Hall and getting permits, various permits for different places that you want to exist in. But that's really what I started with. And then from there, I would start selling vintage furniture and clothing with my friend Jocelyn at Global Native. She's amazing. She also still sells a lot of vintage, so check her out. We started selling stuff together. And then I'm trying to think, how did I get on set? I got on set through costume design. So right, I was doing a lot of different things. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like that's why I always tell people like don't be afraid to try everything. I know like some people are like pick one thing and master it. Not that that's not good advice, but at the beginning of your career, it's good to do everything because you got to even figure out where your lane is, what you're
Right.
drawn to, what you like. And I just don't feel like people should feel a way about being good at a bunch of different things. Because I did have some old heads in my day that made me feel bad about that.
Hmm.
Like why are you doing all these things? You need to just pick one thing. And
Right.
I'm grateful that I'm older now, and I'm just like, yo, I'm grateful I did all those things, because it makes me more multifaceted as a designer. I can take on more work as a designer.
Right.
So yeah, so when I remember so for college, I went to Spelman. That was my first year of college. I went to Spelman College. It was awesome. It was amazing. Like I met all my best friends there. Like all the girls I'm still close to today are the women I met at Spelman. And that network alone has like literally supported my career in general. Just the network I created in 1 year at Spelman and Morehouse. So shout out to them and that community. But my friend Deandra, when I left Spelman, I went to CTP. And while I was at CTP, I was playing. Like I was serious, but I wasn't serious. I was
Yeah.
going to liberal arts, whatever. But I would skip class to go on set. I would skip class to go to New York to get on set with my friend Deandra because she was a celebrity costume designer at the time. Like she was working for like major people, like on the news and like on CNN and all types of stuff like that, and on TV shows.
Right.
So I would come in as her assistant, and yeah, and so that I did that for a while, made really good money doing it in New York. And then when I got on set though, I would make sure I talked to the art department, So even though I was on set in the costume department, I was definitely talking to the art department, letting them know that I really love to do set design. I want to do set dressing. I want to do props. How do I get into that? But I'm not going to hold you. That took a while, right? Like I really had the costume design for a long time. And not that I hated it, but I would have rather been on set working with sets. So,
Yeah.
but it was a nice segue. It was a nice, like open door that kind of helped me get into set design. So while I was on set doing costume design, you know, corporately and for production companies on my own, I was doing my own set design projects, you know, the whole time and kind of creating
Right.
for my friends once again and their brands and what they were doing. Um, and then I'm trying to think. And then I think, right, I did it for a few years, which was really great. I also worked in LA and did some stuff in LA. Shout outs to the Giant series. Actually, I worked on that in LA, which was amazing and wonderful. So all of you should watch that. It's on Issa Rae's YouTube channel.
Okay.
So that was wonderful. That was a wonderful experience. And then I remember, yeah, I got pregnant, y'all. I got pregnant. I had a whole baby. He's amazing. His name's Caleb. And after that, I decided to go back to school, you know? So before that, I was like freelancing between New York and LA. I actually didn't get a lot of work in my own city outside of my friends. And once I had him, I decided to go back to school. I have found a program at UArts. Shout out to UArts. This is my new alma mater. And they had this program that was film design and production, which was really unheard of for me because it combined theater and film into one major. And I forgot to talk about theater. So yes, so I used to work at Stagecrafters. Actually, that was towards the very beginning of my career. I used to work with Stagecrafters doing set construction, and that's what actually I totally forgot. That's what actually really got me into set design because I started doing set construction with them, and then that kind of grew into me doing more, working with props more and things like that in theater.
Right.
So I've done some theater work, but I'm not gonna lie, like film is my heart. Like I love film. I'm not even gonna lie, like you get paid more on a film set to do the same thing you're doing on a theater set. And theater is about more about the bigger picture and less about the
Right.
details. And I'm very detail oriented. And so I love film because it's like I want the camera to like zoom in on my stuff. You know, like I don't
Right.
want to have to make something super ginormous and then like you only see it clearly if you're 5 feet, you know, 15 feet away or something like that.
Right.
So, so yeah, so theater was cool, but film is my heart. So right after I had Caleb, I went to UArts, film design and production, amazing program. It basically teaches you production design for film and theater. So you're
Right.
learning everything from set design for film and theater. They're completely different entities, believe it or not. Costume design for film and theater. You learn sound design for film. I learned lighting design. I learned all these things I didn't even think. Like I was just going for set design. You know, you got to do props design, all types of stuff. So it was well rounded. It was a well rounded program. It was really beneficial. We even took like screenwriting classes. Like I was basically in film school, even with a focus on production design. So that was a really good experience. And then, after I got out of school, it was like no work. I was actually kind of sick. I was like, why did I go back to school? Why did I spend this money? Why did I do this?
Yeah.
But I don't know what happened. I think in January, I worked on IMG. So I got invited to do the show in Brooklyn, which was actually absolutely amazing and beautiful. And it's now been traveling. Like we went from Brooklyn to DC. It was supposed to be in Philly at Cherry Street Pier on July 25th, but Corona. So
Right.
got canceled. But we're still
Yeah.
going to have a show like in the future, when things are a bit safer. But it just feels good, to like have been a part of that and it traveled. And then, honey, come August, I like hit the floor because I got called to work on Concrete Cowboys, which was absolutely amazing. And I was hired as a set dresser. And it was one of the best sets I've ever been on in my life, to be honest. Like I just talked to my boss, Tim Stevens. He's also an amazing production designer and like my mentor. He actually called me yesterday for some more work, but we were just talking about the film. Like he's like, if we never work on another feature for the rest of our lives, like that was it.
Right.
And I said, I agree. So yeah, since then my career is like literally like taken off. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
was getting consistent work and stuff that I didn't even think I would do. Right. So I was doing like pharma commercials, like pharmaceutical commercials and like stuff for hospitals and, just like really getting into this corporate world of production design, which was really cool. And then, right, Kiana. And then I was officially like a production designer for my first like film where I was like the production designer. Because in the past I've been like a set designer, a set decorator, a set dresser.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to understand. Like in an art department, it's so layered. And on each film set you're on, it's always different, right? So like
Right.
it's never the same amount of people. There's never the same amount of positions. But as a production designer, you are responsible for basically staffing the art department, from the costume designer, the props designer, the set dressers, the set decorators, the set designer, the art director, all these different things. So yeah, so I got to work on this amazing short by Mary Grace Navarro. She's amazing. She's an amazing writer. She's an amazing director. And yeah, I can't really tell y'all about it because we're, y'all
Yeah.
had to see it. But it was an amazing experience. It really pushed me to my limit. It showed me what I was capable of. It showed me that people would show up for me, which is always the scary part. Is like, are people going to trust me enough to work with me? Are they going to show up for me and be consistent and like do good work? And my team was absolutely amazing. And it made me, just proud of myself, proud of them, proud of the experience. And Corona totally shut us down, as you remember, Kiana.
Yes.
Uh, totally
Yes.
shut us down, but it's okay because we're coming back. But honestly, that's just like a gist. I mean, I've worked many, many, many jobs in between, and we may talk about more specific stuff later. But that's just kind of the gist of my career from beginning till now. And to be honest, at the beginning of quarantine, like all my work got canceled for the year, right? So like I come off this like high from like working on Concrete Cowboys and getting onto dispatchers from elsewhere, and then getting onto Mayor of Easttown, which is the Kate Winslet show that was just here as well. So like
Mm,
having all, especially not even, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm not even in the union, and I, I've been blessed to get waivers though, right? To be able to be on these sets and to get these experiences that a lot of people can't get or haven't been able to
right.
get because I'm not in the union. And so I don't take it for granted. I've been learning a lot, even now. Like I feel like I'm just at the beginning, and I've been doing this since 2000. I'm 31 now, y'all. I've been doing this since I was 23. So it's just
Wow.
like I've almost done this for a decade, which is I can't even believe. And a lot of people doubted me, as people will, right? Like I've gotten messages from people like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you've really become a set designer." It's like, oh, y'all thought
Yeah.
I was playing. Y'all thought I was playing when I said I was to do this. So I just, it's just nice. Even talking about it right now, it's nice to just think about the
Yeah.
journey that I've been on, but how I'm not even close to being where I want to be, right? It's like
Right.
I'm nowhere near it, but I'm actually really excited to like get started, to have gotten started.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, y'all, Concrete is going to be in the Toronto International Film Festival. And I'm
Oh,
like, really excited.
congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so hyped about it.
That's
And
awesome.
like I said, I just talked to Tim last night, the production designer, and he was just like, Alicia, like, I'm just so proud of you. I'm so proud of what we created. Like, you should be extremely proud of this. And I can't wait for you to see it. Because, we haven't seen it yet.
Okay, yeah.
Um, but anyway, I'll stop talking. That's just the gist of my journey so far.
Cool. Yeah, you kind of like spoke on some of the jobs that you did,
Okay.
and I actually the first time I seen your work was on Instagram, and you did the shoot for These Pink Lips.
Iris, yes.
Yes, and that was the very
Petite.
first, and I saw it, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. And I remember I went on your website, and I even went on it to prepare for the talk, and like some of the people that you worked with, like was These Pink Lips.
Yeah.
We worked with the company Black Noise Media, TV One, 40 Acres, and a Mule with Spike
Yeah,
Lee.
so this was
Tell
my
me
beginning
how.
of my career.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how do you? I guess what advice or like how would you say you a creative should navigate and like network with different people to be able to work with different companies and artists in the
Mm.
industry?
So it's really about being fearless, right? I know that, fear is what keeps a lot of people back from doing the things they want to do. But it's really about fighting, what is it? It's about fighting imposter syndrome, right? Like knowing
Mm-hmm.
that whatever room you're in, you're meant to be there, which is
Right.
something that I've struggled with a lot, and it is hard to get past, but it's a real thing. It's like you got to seize these moments and you got to talk. I mean, naturally I'm a talker, right? So I have kind of a one up. Like I'm not an introvert. I'm an outgoing person. I talk
Right.
to everybody, even for no reason. Like I just
Yeah.
love people. I talk to people. I love to make people feel comfortable and feel good, and that's really what it's about. It's about being genuine, and it's about being fearless, and it's about seizing the moment. Um, because yeah, and it's about really maintaining relationships, right? Like I think about there are people who I met like 5 years ago who have just now become vital in my career, right? So it's
Mm.
about meeting people and maintaining those relationships and not feeling like just because they can't do something for you right then that it's like, oh, this didn't work, or oh, this person isn't important, or oh, I don't need to keep up with this person, because I
Right.
think that's the mindset. We're a part of this, like, Instagram culture. Like we feel like things need to be like this. We're supposed to be famous like this. We're supposed to have everything like this, and like
Right.
that's just not how things work, and they'll never work like that. And it's about, yeah, maintaining relationships, because frankly, me going to Spelman like that, right? I met Deandra at Spelman. You know what I mean? So like and she's now my best friend in the whole world, but it's just like, if I didn't maintain that relationship, right, or speak up, right, close mouth
Mm,
doesn't get fed, and express to her what I was trying to do with my life and my career, I would
right.
have never been put into these rooms. Because to talk about the 40 Acres and a Mule, it was really wild. So this is when I was still assisting Deandra, right? And she literally was on set for Gotham in New York, and she couldn't get off the set. And she called me. She's like, Alicia, I really need you to go on set for me for this job, blah, blah, blah. So I remember calling a costume designer, and she was like a low-key basket case. Like, she's on the phone. She's just like, I don't really know if you can do this. I'm like, well, I'm telling you that I can.
Yeah.
And I'm available. So, like, just let me know what you want to do. And I remember, like, we were on the phone. Like, I remember just waiting for her to call me. It was like some 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock in the morning. And literally, I just had, because frankly, I was scared too, right? Like, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know. I was scared. I was like, yo, I don't really know if I know what I'm doing, but I'm going to act like I know what I'm doing. And that's another thing. Nobody knows what they're doing. And that's what people have to remember, right? It's just like, nobody knows what they're doing and everybody's winging it, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's about having the confidence to wing it and having the confidence to make mistakes, right? Because that's really it. It's like, things may not go right, things may fail, but it's about just having that confidence and trusting, right? And, I'm a Christian. I trust in the Lord, right? So
Hmm.
it's about trusting that God is going to make things work for you no matter what, but you got to take the chance. So
Right.
anyway, I remember showing up on set, and I always get there. When I show up on set, I'm at least 15 minutes early, right? I feel like you're late if you're not early.
Mm.
So, and I've been taught that, by different mentors I've had. So I showed up early. I made sure I scouted the whole entire neighborhood. And I didn't even know what the job was, right? I didn't know who I was working for, what the job was for. And I remember I'm just sitting on the step. After I scouted, I knew where everything was. Like, I knew where there was a Walgreens. I knew where there was, like, all these different things, in case they needed food or, like, whatever. And that's something good for any assistant, even if you're just like a costume assistant or whatever type of assistant you are. Because I was actually on set to be be in wardrobe. Like, I wasn't doing set design for this, and I knew where everything was. So like, you want to anticipate the needs of who you're working for. You know what I mean? Like, you want to know what they need before they need it. So I'm just sitting on the steps, y'all, and like Spike Lee just walks up the steps, and I'm sitting here like, what? I'm like, yo, did she really just give me this job? Did she know that this was for Spike and she just gave this away? Well, of course she had no idea it was for Spike, because she probably would have canceled and came to Philly.
Yeah.
But I was just so grateful. That was divine, right? Like, God knew that I needed to be there at that time for that moment. And it was
Right.
actually an amazing experience, right? It actually helped my confidence so much, because while I was working for Spike, I messed up, okay? And this is about making mistakes, but knowing that you're going to be okay. So I remember I'm sitting on set and I'm working for this lady, and she's like, go, you got to do last looks. You know about last looks. You got to do
Yeah.
last looks. So I'm literally running. She wants me to run across the set to do last looks, but I know they look fine. I trusted it, right? I'm like, Sandra, they look fine. No, Alicia, you need to run. You need to go. And I'm like, oh my God. So I literally start running. It was like slow motion, right? Because film was up, right? And I
Yeah.
knew that. So like, when you hear that, film up, like you chill.
Yeah.
Girl, she was yelling at me, and I did not want to lose my job. And I'm young. I'm still impressionable. I'm like trying to people please and all these things. Girl, I run across that thing, and everybody was trying to stop me. It's like it was like slow motion. Everybody's like, no, stop. And literally, I run into frame.
Oh no.
He turns around and cusses me out. Like people who work for Spike know how he is, okay? And he don't play. He got the same people working for him for like 30 years. Like, he cussed me out. He cussed me out, right? So of course I feel crazy. I'm like, yo, and everybody's looking at me crazy. They're like, yo, your career is over. Like, you just ran in front of the frame of Spike Lee? You're done. He's telling everybody in the industry you're done. And so I just feel like it's over. I'm just like, you know what? Let's hang it up. It's over. Do you know that I stood up for myself though? And that's what made it worse, because when he yelled at me, I turned around and I yelled at him, you know?
Yeah.
And I just told him, like, I was just like, I didn't do anything wrong. I told him, I said, I was listening to my boss. My boss told me to run, so I ran. He's like, well, I'm fining you. I said, okay, cool. He fined me $100 on set. It was coming out of my check. I said, okay,
Oh
great.
wow.
You could fine me, no problem. And do you understand? I just knew my career was over. Like, after that, even Sandra, she was like, you know what? You threw me under the bus. I said, I didn't throw you under the bus. I was standing up for both of us, okay? Because last look needed to be done. I'm trying to, like, rationalize it. Well, anyway, the next day when I came to work, he stopped me. And And mind you, before this, I didn't have any personal conversations with him outside of like, him like, wardrobe,
Yeah.
before he knew my name. You know what I mean? So that's the only time. Do you understand that this man comes up to me the next day and he's like, "Oh, you're here?" I said, "I am here." He was like, "Oh, I didn't think he was going to come back to work." I said, "Why would I not come back to work?" He was like, "Oh, the way I talked to you yesterday, I didn't think he was coming back." And I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Oh, honey, if you know who my father is," I said, that's, I'm cool. That didn't really hurt me.
Yeah.
He said, "Well, I'm glad you got tough skin because you're going to need it in this industry." And that was it. That was it. So I went back to work. I did my thing. After that, he knew my name, right? He's calling Alicia. I remember I put my homegirl on to, like, the last day on set. I couldn't be there because I had to work. This one I was still working at West Elm doing windows. And I had to go to work that day to do windows. And I remember calling her in. Do you know I ended up, this was also God, because I went to work, realized that I didn't have to be there. Like, I thought I had to be there and I did it. And then I got to go back to set. And Spike didn't want to work with anybody else. Like, he was like, "Where's Alicia?" Like, he played my friend. Like, he was like, "Who are you?" "Oh, I went, where's Alicia?" And so it just showed me, right? It's just like, maybe I shouldn't have yelled the way I did. Maybe that was disrespectful, right? I was heated in the moment. But it just showed me that I can trust. You know what I mean? Like, you got to trust your journey. You got to stand up for yourself. You got to not be afraid to open your mouth. Because frankly,
Right.
who knows if I didn't open my mouth? Maybe he would have just been like, forget her. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was a wonderful job. It was a wonderful job. And on that set, I connected with, so Black Noise Media, which we were just talking about. This is what I'm saying. So, like, while I'm on set, right, I'm connecting, right? Because most of the people on set is talking, right? Like, and Kaya, I know she's watching. She can attest to this. When you're on set, it's really like hurry up and wait, right? So they rushing you around every 5 minutes, but all you're doing is sitting around waiting for camera to go up, right?
Yeah.
So during that time, though, you're connecting. You're talking, you're connecting, you're sharing, you're talking about past jobs, all this stuff. You're sharing your talents, right? So people know what you can do, and they're already thinking about where they can place you, where you can work, right?
Right.
So I remember talking to Boogie, right? This is like Spike's right hand man. His name is Michael Pickney, and he has a company called Black Noise Media. And this was my first lead costume designer gig. So I remember connecting with him on set because the last day, remember when I told you, so my friend showed up for me and Spike didn't want her to work.
Right.
But she had to work. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't just, and that was like a Devil Wears Prada moment, actually. Because when I came to work, my boss was like, "So, are you just gonna let her work today? Are you not gonna take your position back?" And I remember being faced with that, like, "Dad, yo, she really is getting my rate. I really want this job back. Spike wants me to work. He don't even want her to work." But I
Yeah.
remember, like, that was a humbling moment, right? Which is also what you should always be, is humble, right? It was a humbling moment for me because it's like, Alicia, she showed up for you. She didn't have to
Yeah.
show up for you, right? Let her have that check. Let her have that job. Do you understand? Once I gave that up, I got elevated to first team PA, which is humbling myself, right? And I was able to get elevated, right? So I ended up getting promoted to first team PA, right? Which is like, that's when you're really in the production team, right? So that's when you're working under the director.
Okay.
And so that was, I was a production assistant, but I was like at the top of production, be the top production assistant or top PA. So that felt really good. And, I was able to work closely with Boogie, which is what got me my first costume designer gig. I worked on a pilot for him called, I kind of forget the name, y'all. It's on my website, but
Yeah, but so you could go to our website and get all the information.
But I did my first costume designer role, and we shot in Coney Island, which was really fun. It was a little dark. It was like, about prostitution and human trafficking, but it was a necessary conversation to have, right? Because this is when I even learned that, like, human trafficking is more rampant in the U.S. than anywhere else, right? Like, this is stuff that a lot of people don't even know. So I learned a lot. That's another reason why I like being a set designer. It's like history, right? Like, just research and history in itself. And I'm sure you enjoy that with costume design. Like, during it's like it allows you to, like, escape to these other eras and these other worlds, that is just, like, really, it's fun. And it just expands your knowledge in general. You know what I mean? So, but that was my Spike Lee experience. It was hilarious and it was great. And I hope to work with him again. Because I even remember, I'm a person that doesn't like take pictures on set. Like, my mom gets mad, like, "Why don't you take a picture with Spike? Why don't you take a picture with Idris?" It's just like, I'm at work. You know what I mean? And that's another conversation. Being a Black woman on set is and Kaya can attest to this too, because I know she watched it. That's how we connected on Concrete, because it's a whole other ballgame being a Black woman on set. Like, a Black woman in any industry, let me just say that. I'm not acting like it's in production, but it's really a thing. Like, you have to conduct yourself in a whole different way because you're perceived in a different way, right? Which is really annoying, but it kind of is what it is. So it's like I do have to, you know, not be as excited or as hyped because it could be misconstrued. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Um, so anyway, that was my experience with Spike, which was wonderful. And then how that led into Black Noise Media. So that's just keeping that connection, right? And I told Boogie, I remember being on set with him, like, yo, you know, just, you know, let me know when you're ready because I'm ready to work. You know what I mean? And once again, I didn't even hear from him from like a whole year later, right? So that's another thing I'm saying is like, just because you meet somebody once doesn't mean that they're not going to be vital in your career. Thank you, Imani. She was my assistant. That's my best friend. It's
Okay.
called The Trade. The pilot is called The Trade. Yes, Imani, that was great. So yeah, so that was Boogie, and then right, you said Black Noise Media. Iris. So I love Iris to death. She is an amazing designer. I feel like God always puts certain artists in my life at a given time to like reignite me, right? When I get discouraged or when I get bored with my work or things like that. You know what I mean? And Iris is one of those people who, for a lot of years, she really helped me just get out of my shell, you know, and to really get into my work in a different way. And frankly, I like working with Iris because she gave me an opportunity. Like a lot of people are scared of her, right? Or were, right? She's another good example of an artist who was just consistent, even though people were bashing her and like telling her she was too racy or too raunchy. But she
Right.
was consistent. And then you see how like a time opened up that was like
Yeah.
appropriate, that was like socially appropriate for her. And then everybody's like, oh yeah, great. And it's like, she been great. But y'all
Right.
hating because, you know, people are sheep. But anyway, she I was just grateful to always be able to design for her and really make her stuff more approachable, right? So
Yeah.
like be able to design for her and make this sexual empowerment that she was speaking about just more attainable, right? And more approachable so people weren't as afraid of it. So I was grateful to be able to have that experience to stretch me. I've designed shows for her. I've designed sets for her product. Like one of the last sets we worked on together was my favorite. It was for her pillow line. Like she had came out with pillows and like housewares. So I was, you know, I produced that whole thing. Like I was able to, I hired, you know, I picked the location. I hired the team that we worked with. And it was an awesome experience. So working with Iris was always fun. It was always crazy. We worked on stuff in New York together. Like we were all over the place together. So those were like some really good years. It was really fun. And frankly, honestly, one of my newest friends, actually, another artist that I work with, Imani Shanklin Roberts, she has become almost that same type of muse for me, right? Like an artist that I really connect with, where I'm consistently thinking about ways to elevate their work. And, you know, because muses are real, you know what I mean? Like there are people that
Right.
you connect with as an artist that are going to fuel your work. You know what I mean? And frankly, I'm one of my own muses, to be honest, but I just love the people around me because people ask me, like, where does your inspiration come from? And I'm just like,
Right.
honestly, children's books and the people around me. You know what I mean? Like the people around me really are my muses and they really inspire me in so many different ways. And honestly, recently the Bible, right? Like I've really started to become closer to God and really create more imagery for my church actually and like sets for my
Right.
church that I never thought I would be doing. Like I just created this lighthouse. It's the first thing I've ever created from scratch in my whole career, right? Because before this I was using a lot of found objects. I was never like drafting. Well, I was drafting, like hand drafting,
Yeah.
but I wasn't like creating those things, right? Like I would just draw them, like, oh, this is cute, and you know, but I wasn't really bringing them to fruition. And when I joined this lighthouse ministry at my church, like I built, I don't even know how tall it is, like a 10-foot house,
Oh
you know,
wow.
like it's like a house. It's like
Yeah.
all these different boxes built up into this big house, and I put all these light bulbs in it. It's just absolutely beautiful. Like I cried the first time it went up. So yeah, so I forget what I'm talking about, but I think I'm just talking about how
Yeah.
oh, they're just talking about the importance of like, you know, relationships and how
Yeah.
they, right, can like, you just climb this ladder based off the relationships you make and it puts you into different, you know, different settings that you never thought you'd be in, you know, which is
Right.
fun. So yeah. And what else? So you talked about Black Noise Media, 40 Acres, Pink Lips. Was there
Yeah.
anybody else?
Talk about it was another one, TV1.
TV1. Okay, let's talk
Yeah.
about that. So this is when I was pregnant, y'all. So when I got pregnant, I was working the whole time, which was actually great for me. So
Mm.
I really believe and attest to like pregnant women, keep moving, keep shaking, keep working, all those things, right? If you can, because it really just made my pregnancy 10 times better. So anyway, I was working, I got hired by Otis Salid. He's kind of a legend. He is responsible for all the choreography for like School Days and like a lot of Spike Lee joints, right?
Wow.
Um, he was out of the business for a while, you know, raising kids, living his life, and he was trying to come back into the industry, and so he hired me as his assistant to do the TV One upfronts. So if people know TV, upfronts are an event that happens, you know, yearly, where different brands or companies come together to pitch things to a network, right? So this is like for commercial placement or product placement or, you know, shows or whatever, right? It's like it gives people a space to kind of pitch to a network to be chosen. So we were responsible for designing that event. So it was in New York. And this was, you know, this was the first time I kind of had this type of position, you know, like being a production designer for an event. You know, it wasn't like film, but it was for a TV network. You know what I mean? Um, so that was an interesting experience. I actually, in all honesty, ended up getting asked to step down from that job because I was working for this guy. He was coming back into the industry, you know, so mind you, TV One is run by Black women in general, which I also didn't know, which I love, right? So it's all Black women that run TV One. And so that run TV One. And what happened? I got distracted because my kid was out here acting crazy. So working for TV One, and I got fired from the job, or I was fired, but I was asked to step down, but I was really fired because I ended up putting on, what did I do? I was working for this guy, and he was in Atlanta. I was in New York, so I was like doing all of the correspondence with everybody, going back and forth. And I remember he got really upset with me because this is also when I've always worked closely with Sky Blue Media. Shout out to Rakia, she's amazing. And they were working with, what is her name? Dom Streeter. So Dom Streeter was one of the designers that won. I love you, buddy. One of the designers that won Project Runway, right? So she was
Yes.
a big deal, and she was a lovely person. I had worked with her. Actually, oh my gosh, remind me to talk about KRT, Karan Swint.
Yeah, that's definitely on the list. Yeah.
Gentlewoman. Remind me to talk about that. Okay, so Dom Streeter, right? So I remember they were looking for a designer, and mind you, this man wasn't taking any of his meetings, right? I was taking all of his meetings for him. He could never answer the phone, so I was literally like working, like I was him while he wasn't there. So I'm the one that's like talking all the ladies. I'm on all the meetings. So I remember them asking me, like, you know, do you know any designers? And I'm like, yeah, like I know a lot of up and coming designers. I'm actually friends with Dom Streeter, blah, blah, blah. So I remember even like telling him, like, I'm going to put on Dom Streeter for this project, and this is what we're doing. And so, of course, he did it. He acts like he didn't get the email. He ends up getting really mad at me for putting her on, you know? And at the time, I was really confused. Like, why would you be mad at me for making you look good? But you know, it was what it was. Like, he didn't appreciate it. He didn't like it. And frankly, you know, even at the end of the day, like, I may have overstepped the boundary, right? But I thought I was doing what was right, right? And but I got fired for it. And this is an example. You can always, you know, you can be great and get fired for your greatness, you know? So that's another thing people have to realize. Like, don't take it personal. A lot of times it's other people's stuff. It's not yours. But I didn't understand it at the time. And I remember just being, this was like I had never got paid as much as I've gotten paid for this job. Like, this was probably at that point in my career the highest paid job I ever received. I got put on through this really wonderful lady who also, yeah, she doesn't really care for me anymore either, I don't think, because of him being upset with me. But anyway, it was an amazing job. I actually never got pictures from it or anything, but I actually ended up putting one of my other friends on to a job, but she was able to see it and take, you know, she saw it and kind of attested to it and affirmed me. But it was a beautiful show, you know, that I never got to go to.
Oh,
but
man.
it was absolutely gorgeous. And we designed this whole space in New York, you know, just kind of to speak to Blackness, right? To speak to the beauty of Blackness and creating this wonderful, tranquil space for people to come to really pitch, you know, and feel comfortable, like, presenting their ideas to this major network. So that was a good job. And frankly, I actually hope I meet Otis one day. Because the funny part is I've never met him. And I never met him in person. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, wow.
So we worked together like over the phone, because this is like, we weren't even FaceTiming, or there was like really no virtual stuff really popping in. So we were just always on the phone. And I'm actually really hopeful, like, one day I need to meet this man, okay? Because I just would like to. Like, it works for you, but, you know, and it didn't work out, but I'm still grateful for the job, and I'm grateful for the experience. And that's another thing to remember. Like, things may not work out the way you think they should, or the way you want, But to be honest, like, God orders your steps, right? Like, he knows what's going to happen before you know what's going to happen. And he's going to make sure you're all right, because clearly
Right.
it's him, right? Like, that job, like, I really thought at the end, like the Spike Lee thing, like, this is going to ruin my career. I'm not going to go to work anymore. She's going to, like, talk, you know, because it is a thing. Like, people do bash people in the industry, right? Like, there are people who are blacklisted and may not even know it. You know what I mean? Because of the way people talk. And I'm just grateful that God spared me, right? Especially in reference to that job, because that was, you know, that was a big job.
Right.
So yeah, so that was TV1, which was really good. And then what else? What's next?
Did you want to talk about? You said Karan Smith.
Karan, oh my gosh. Do you know it's killing me, y'all, that my backdrop's not up? Like, I really want to put it back up, but I'm gonna chill. That also is my friend. That also is my friend Roscoe Spears, y'all. She's an amazing. Actually, no, I'm not gonna put it up. She's an amazing artist. She's also a production designer. She's also the creative director for the Lip Bar. So if you're not wearing Lip Bar, which I'm wearing right now, actually, if you're not wearing the Lip Bar, you're corny. Okay, I just want you to know you should wear it. Sorry, you're not corny. I'm excited about the lipstick. So anyway, Gentlewoman. So Gentlewoman was a book that was written, actually, I can't say his name correctly, but if you look up the book, you'll see the guy's name. Black author. It was a beautiful, hey Roscoe. It was a beautiful book written from a man's point of view, basically about how to treat a woman, right? How to value a black woman, how to treat a black woman, but from a man's point of view, you know, and not like from a female's point of view. And it was a book of poetry, actually. So he wasn't like, but Karan went, if everybody doesn't know, he has a company called Kings Roll Together. It's all about empowering Black kings and queens in general. He's been one of my best friends for a long time. Gosh, I forgot to talk about search and rescue. So, Gentlewoman, he decided to take the book and turn it into an editorial, right? So this was actually my first. This was actually my first job as a set designer. In all honesty, this was my first job as a set designer doing an editorial spread like this. So it was me, Karan, and it was me, Karan, and Darren Burton, who's also another amazing photographer. He's one of my favorite photographers, actually, in the city of Philadelphia. Nobody captures my stuff the way he does. So anyway, here's a question, but can I save the question? Does it go away? I'm just going to leave it. So Gentlewoman was my first set design job. This is the first time okay. This is the first time I worked with Sky Blue Media, actually. So I always have been obsessed with Rakia Reynolds. She's an amazing woman of public relations and tech and all things wonderful and cool and great. And we actually office for one of my sets, which was actually amazing. And we did a whole editorial spread that was based off this book, basically. And it was probably one of the most beautiful shoots that I did, to be honest. And I'm still really proud of it. Like, there are pictures of it on my website as well. But that's what really, you know, totally showed me, like, the power I had to, like, really, you know, create these things from nothing. Like, use my gift of, like, being a people person and creating relationships and, like, really get into these locations. Like, we shot at Bow Concepts, which is not even there anymore. It was a beautiful furniture store. But we shot at Bow Concepts, which was amazing. We shot at Sky Blue Media. Like, all the sets, the environments we used were really elevated and beautiful and wonderful. So for that to be, like, my first time stepping out on my own, getting locations with nobody to back me up, or no, you know, people just trusted me, which was also, you know, wonderful to, like, really find her and, like, just, they're the reason why I worked for Liberty Fairs, which is also, y'all should totally follow Sharifa. She's also an amazing woman that created all these beautiful trade shows in New York City. Dad, Kiana, you're really making me remember. This is so great. So, right. They're like, search and rescue basically is, there's so many things. They build custom furniture. They sell vintage goods. They do everything. They design retail stores. Like, I designed a couple retail stores with them in New York and in Philly. And they're collectors. I mean, the biggest thing about them is they're collectors and they're artists. Karan's father, actually, I don't know if y'all remember, if y'all old enough. I feel old. But Karan's father was responsible for Mesquite. Y'all remember? Do you remember Mesquite? So yeah, I was just talking about search and rescue and just how vital they were in my career, how they really taught me, like, how to make a table. Like, all my woodworking skills and carpentry skills have come from them. Even my eye was strengthened, right, by working with them, because they're artists first. What I was saying before we got broke up is that Kenya, which is my father, is responsible for Mesquite. which was like a major brand in Philly, like back, you know, in like the 90s or whatever. And so these are the, you know, these are the men that I'm working with, you know, like they've created multiple businesses, they successful businesses. And, you know, a lot of, like I said, a lot of what I know is because of them, you know, like they're probably my biggest mentors to this day. And that's another thing. People like creators need to know you're going to have multiple mentors, right?
Right.
I felt like I used to have this idea that I would have like one mentor and like that was it. And like I needed to just have that one. And what I've noticed is throughout my career, I've had many people, praise God, that have been vital in my career who have, especially the women.
Right.
Imani Shanklin's on here. She's literally another one of my who are able to stretch me and grow me and teach me so many things, you know, especially in reference to my confidence as being a female artist and a female designer and a Black female designer at that. Even recently, I worked with Shanina Diana. She's another amazing artist. And I almost feel like Imani Shanklin got me on this kick of, you know, supporting like I said, I did it for Imani Shanklin a while ago, and then I was able to do it for Shanina Diana. And you know what's crazy? Even before that, it's almost like this was manifested. There's another beautiful lady that y'all need to follow. She has a company called Florida Water Interiors, right? Her name is Chop. She's probably one of the most powerful, one of the most amazing women I've ever met. I met her when I was working for Liberty Fairs. She actually asked me last year, like, you know, I want to do this thing where we create altars or whatever in these parks and blah, 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 and create these like safe spaces in the community for Black people. And it was so crazy because like we never ended up doing that project, which we will in the future. But like a couple months later, Imani Shanklin calls me like, can you create altars for my show? I'm like, what? It's just like stuff be so aligned, you know what I mean? And they just like flow and like stuff be manifesting without me even knowing it.
But the question was from Wow It's Kaya, and she asked, can you explain work-life balance? So how did you be able to balance your freelancing work with the work that you did like on your part-time jobs when you had them?
So to be honest, I feel like I've just figured out work-life balance. Actually, no, I'm lying. I've kind of figured out work-life balance. So like at the beginning of my career, I was a crazy person. Like I was literally, because you know, you're like young, you're in that people pleaser phase. You're just like, I gotta do everything I can, no matter what job it is. I gotta take it. I can't say no to everything, which is completely exhausting and ridiculous. Because you can say no to things, but you just don't know that. So yeah, I didn't have a balance, right? Like I would literally be like going from being on set for 12 hours to go to work, then go back to school, or I have to be at class. You know what I mean? So like I was actually really like, I was actually really drained, you know, like really drained, really burnt out. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't okay. And frankly, I still struggle with that. I'm not going to lie. Like, even when I was working during that time recently, like when I got on concrete and then I went from concrete to, I went from concrete to dispatchers to HB, like working nonstop, you know, with not a lot of balance, you know what I mean? So I'm not going to hold you. I'm really grateful. I mean, even when I had my son, I remember, and this one, I wasn't even back on set yet. I had my son, but I remember, this was ridiculous, y'all. I really worked at a hotel. I didn't even have to do this. I worked at a hotel and I was in school while being a new mom. Like Caleb was like just born, fresh out. And yeah, so I really sucked at work-life balance. I would say now, though, I'm not going to lie, like, especially with like quarantine and being able to slow down and like manage my work differently and really just maturing, right? Like knowing that I don't have to be a people pleaser, trusting, right, that God is working it out for me and he's going ahead of me. So like I don't have to be at every networking event. I don't have to be in these rooms, to be honest, at this point in my career to get work. Like I remember even last year I was sitting at home and I got a call to do a event for the 76ers, like a historical. I never got it. Like it never happened. But the fact is I was like sitting in my room doing absolutely nothing. I wasn't even on Instagram like that. Wasn't talking to nobody. And I got a call to do a whole Sixers event, like a historical, like almost like an exhibit. You know what I mean? And once again, I didn't get the job, but it just like, that was almost God showing me like, I got you. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to bring yourself out. You don't have to people please. You don't have to be all over the place. Like I'm God and I got you and I'm gonna make sure you're good. And so I think, you know, God showing himself in ways like that over and over kind of really you know, it really helps me realize, like, okay, girl, you can slow down, you can breathe, you can chill.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna act like when I get in the mode, because I love my work, right? So when I get in that mode, I am low key crazy. Like I'm keep going, 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 you know?
Right.
And yeah, I'm still learning, like I said, how to rest, how to take breaks, things like that. But I do a way better job of it now than I did. And especially becoming a mom, right? Because it's like I want to make
Mm-hmm.
time for my son. Like I don't want my son growing up angry, talking about I was never here for him or he never saw me, or you know, the stuff I
Yeah.
be telling my parents now that I'm grown, you know?
Yeah.
It's like I don't want him saying that. So it's like it's really important. And that's another thing. Like I was taking Caleb on set with me since he was a baby. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Which was
Yeah.
really wonderful. Like I was literally on ladders. I was on ladders with a belly, and I was on ladders with him in a, you know, a little carrier. Because I
Yeah.
think it's also great that he's been able to see my work. You know what I mean? And like see what I do. So even when I'm not home, right? Like Caleb knows what I'm doing. So he's not even like
Mm.
upset. It's just like, oh mom, how was your setup? How was your setup? How did it go?
That's cool.
You know?
Yeah.
And he tells, like, if he has an opinion, mom, I think you should put this over here. I think you should put this there. You know? So like allowing him to be a part of my work has also helped my work life balance, right? Because
Right.
it brings my life into my work, but not in like an unhealthy way. You know what I mean? So I guess what's the conclusion? What are you saying? What are you saying, Alicia? So I guess what I'm saying is that work-life balance is a constant journey, right? And I think it ebbs and flows. It's like some parts of your career you're going to have like amazing, impeccable work-life balance, and other times of your career you're going to suck at it. But that's also okay, you know, because we're human. And frankly, I mean, I know consistency is key, but I still struggle with believing that there's some people in the world that are like legit consistent with every freaking thing for their whole lives. Like
Yeah.
I don't really believe that, and I haven't met a person yet who's done that. But so, you know, it's about being easy on ourselves and not beating ourselves up, which I also don't do the best job at. I'm still working on it.
Yeah. For
But
sure.
I know it's a thing that we should do all the time is be kind to ourselves, you know?
Right.
But yeah, once again, I think it ebbs and flows. It's always different. But I totally am like 10 times better at it now than I was even 2 years ago, you know?
Mm.
So, yeah.
That's cool. So
Did
you
it
were
say something
talking,
about finance? Was it, that was the whole question?
and yeah, and also one was managing finances as a freelancer.
Oh, girl.
Any tips about that?
So when you're managing finances as a freelancer, it's like as a freelancer, it's really like you're living by chance, right? You don't know you don't necessarily know when your next check is coming. I mean, this is why people really, that's why it's good to be in a union, right? And I'm not in a union, right? And to be honest, it's something that I'm thinking about still doing, but at the same time, I don't know if it's necessary because of the clientele that I've created and the type of work that I have outside of being in the union, and the fact that God has been blessing me with getting waivers, you know, so I have been able to experience these union sets without even being in the union, which isn't
Right.
a normal thing, which I learned, but it's still like something that makes me question, do I really need to go all the way? You know what I mean? But that's just a way to get yourself consistent work, right? A
Mm-hmm.
consistent paycheck, you know that checks are coming, because it's like they're forcing you to work, right? Like you don't even have a choice. It's
Right.
like, okay, this job is here, you're on it, right? And I just don't know if I feel like being in that world. Like I kind of like how I can pick and choose my jobs, and you know, I have like full
Right.
autonomy over my work and things like that. So anyway, finances, I feel like it's all about being ahead of the game, right? So like even now, right? For example, we're in quarantine, and you know, I knew that my jobs were about to get canceled, like point blank period, because being in production is being next to people in people's faces, like all these
Yeah. Yeah.
things. So I knew that it was going to be over, and I remember, you know, the way you pivot in seasons like this is pay everything up, right? So my whole thing is I decided to make sure, you know, I paid myself first, as you should always do. That's a rule of thumb. I paid myself first, so I made sure I had money to just survive, right, with my son, and we could eat and all these things. But I also made sure my rent is paid up till September, right? I also
Mm.
made sure
Yeah.
all my bills are paid up 3 months in advance, because it's just like I don't know where my next paycheck is coming, right? But I know that I need a roof
Right.
over my head, and I know that I want to eat. So it's like, yeah, I think it's just about I mean, being real with yourself. Like, you know that you're working by chance. Like, you know this is the life you chose, and you have to move accordingly. So I think it's about making sure you pay yourself first. It's making sure that you know, you're saving constantly, right? When you're getting these checks, because production money is deceptive, honey. Okay, these checks are so crazy sometimes. It's like I'm like, why am I getting this much money? This is amazing, right? Frankly, they should be paying
Right.
teachers more than they pay us, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
So but you can't get sucked into it, right? Because it's like, yeah, this money is here now, but it doesn't mean it's going to be here next month. It doesn't mean it's going to be here in a
Right.
couple weeks. So it's like being careful with that money. Like when I get that money, it's about dispersing it different places, making sure it's going into savings, making sure I'm, if I got enough, I'm investing in something, right? Making sure I'm paying up on my bills as much as I can without being broke, right? So it's not about, giving all your money to bills, but it's about just making sure you have a
Yeah.
cushion. So I think if you move like
Right.
that and being real with yourself and knowing the industry you're in, like as designers, we don't have these cookie cutter jobs. We don't have these buttoned up structured jobs where what's going to happen every day. Like, frankly, that's boring. I don't knock people that do it, but for me, that's boring. Like, I don't want to know what's going to happen
Right.
every day. I don't want to go to a job and know that I'm going to do the same thing every day. Like, I
Yeah.
like the excitement, but with that comes risk that you have to be prepared for it. So yeah.
Cool. So I want to actually go back a little bit and talk about your time at the University of Arts.
Mm-hmm.
You already did different projects and freelancing jobs. What made you go back? Because some people would have saw that as a way of being like, I don't need school. I personally had that on my own experience being in
Yeah.
school and then feeling like school wasn't for me and just me trying to figure out on my own.
Yeah.
But what made you go back to go school to get those further education for your field?
So I think, so what's funny, right? Like I started off being in school because frankly, when I first started, I wanted to be a journalist. I was supposed to be like a whole journalist. I was going to go work for, Vibe magazine and be on the
Yeah.
news and all this stuff. I was gonna be, I was supposed to do all this stuff, and then I'm like, no, I'm gonna be a designer.
Yeah.
Um, and frankly, I think school is important, right? I think that it's important to. I love Andrea. I think it's important to shout out to Andrea. She's also an amazing designer. Love her. So what am I talking about, y'all? I get so distracted.
Being at University of Arts.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So
No,
I
you're
think it's
fine.
important. This is how I be. This is how I be talking. So
Yeah.
I feel like going to school, like getting experience in the field, I think is just as important as going to school, right? And I think that's how I get annoyed with like this whole like Instagram entrepreneur culture because it's like, oh my God, do it yourself. Never go to school. You don't need knowledge. It's like, yeah, you kind of do, right? Like you can't compare the two, right? Like there's things that I learned on set that I would have never learned at school. There's things I learned at school that I would have never learned on set. So I'm not
Right.
going to hold you. Like I have friends who never went to school, who are amazing entrepreneurs. They have amazing businesses. They're making amazing money. And frankly, they had a different type of school, right? So I guess that's what I guess I want to further that idea. So when I say school, I don't even mean like a university per se, right?
Right.
I think schooling can be done in multiple ways, but I think that it's smart to find some sort of training or some sort of schooling as you're being an entrepreneur and as a freelancer because we don't know it all. And frankly,
Right.
yes, it's good to learn from trial and error, and yes, it's good to make mistakes and learn from them. But frankly, I don't think it's always necessary. Like if we just get good counsel and we use wisdom, we can really save ourselves from a lot of stuff, but still learn lessons, right? At the same time. So I think
Right.
that at the beginning of my career, I feel like it was wonderful for me to have got on set and just figure it out. I mean, I think that was really empowering for me. It put a different level of confidence in me in reference to my work and the way that I can move in the industry. Because outside of work, right, like knowing how to play the game and knowing how to move is a whole other art in itself, right? That a lot of people don't know how to do and a lot of people aren't gifted at doing. And people want to say it's a game sometimes, but I feel like there's really an art to doing it. And the most, because there are people who do the worst work, right? They're the least talented. All their stuff looks generic, looks the same, but they're getting these bomb jobs, right? Because they know how to
Yeah.
move in the industry, like they know how to play this game. And
Right.
frankly, I'm grateful to God because I feel like I've learned that I don't have to be devious, I don't have to be mean, I don't have to be a jerk to know how to move in this industry and still be successful, because people say that like, oh, I have to be a B and I have to be hard and they're not going to respect me if I don't do this. And frankly, I know it sounds cliche, but
Right.
like kill them with kindness. Honestly, like you
Yeah.
can be a wonderful stand-up person and still have influence, still get the job done, and still have favor in so many rooms. You know what I mean? So back to the school thing. So I'm grateful I started off the way I did, but I also am so grateful that God allowed me to get pregnant to slow me
Yeah.
down, right? Because the only reason why I went back to school is because I got pregnant. And I had been in school, right? So I had went to Spelman. I did, a year at Spelman, then, and really spent 2 years in there, but did a year of school because I was just having a blast. And
Yeah.
then left there, went to CCP and just dragged my feet, because I was just like, nah, I don't know what I want to do. I'm just going to be here, blah, blah, blah. And like it took me 4 years to get a 2-year associate. Like, what is that? Anyway, so luckily I'm grateful, right? Because I would have
Yeah.
probably never went to school. I would have like got out of school, been so hyped, moved to LA, you know, did all this hype stuff, which I don't
Right.
mind. I think it's beautiful to like branch out and stuff. But I'm also the queen of like wanting to conquer my city before I conquer anything else.
Right.
Because I feel like too many of us just get up and go, and it's like, but what about our city? Like, what about, you know, where you came from and what shaped you and what grew you and, you know, what built
Right.
character in you? You know, like let's get back to that community and that arena. You know.
For sure.
So anyway, I'm grateful I went to school though because it showed me the technical side, right? So I was able to just learn one of the more, you know, hands-on artsy side, creative, conceptualized side, just being on set and winging it. But but going to school like taught me, you know, how to use cameras, right? Like it gave me a one up. It taught me how to use software that I would have never learned how to use. Like I know how to use, you know, like SketchUp or AutoCAD or Vectorworks, and like I know how to film something. I know how to edit film, which is actually one of my favorite things to do that I want to actually get into more is doing more editing. I know how to edit film. I know how to edit sound, right? Like I know how to do all these things that I would have never. I know about different lights, right? Lighting is
Right.
very complicated, which I never realized until I went to school. Like I was able to like do lighting stuff in my church, right? Like because I went to school. Um,
Right.
and this just popped into my head. It's so crazy how like when I was a kid, I was definitely on the AV ministry at my church, the audio visual ministry, right? Before I even
Oh
thought
yeah.
about being in production. So I was learning how to use soundboards and all of that just at my church. And this is attesting to different types of schooling, right, y'all? It's like you can go to
Right.
school at a lot of different places in a lot of different settings. Like even now, I literally am pissed it's Corona because I'm like, dang, I want to take a carpentry class or I want to take a, you know, like while I was in school, I remember taking a fibers class, which wasn't
Mm.
even a part of my curriculum. But my last semester, that's the downside of school a little bit. They play with you sometimes with your credits. And
Yeah.
I literally was on this whole track because my program's so new. I was a part of the first class, like the second. I was one of the second people to graduate from the program.
Oh
Of course, they're
wow.
still trying to figure it out, right? Like it's a brand new
Yeah.
program. Actually, Andrea, remember Andrea from the film?
Yes, I do.
She was
Hi,
my
Andrea.
assistant. She also She was the first to graduate from that program, and she killed it. She's absolutely amazing. And she was the first to graduate from it, and I was the second. So they just didn't really have a lot of things figured out, right? Which makes sense. Like, you know, it's like a
Yeah.
brand new program. They're still building it as they go. But that put me in a bind. Well, a bind that God worked out, right? Because I ended up
Yeah.
having to stay there an extra semester. But because I stayed there an extra semester for one class, y'all, for one class, I ended up being able to have a whole free roster, right? So I could take all these classes that I just wanted to take. Like I was able to take photography, like film photography. Like I'm in the dark room. This is like one of my new like. Well, I need to get back into it, but during that time, it was like my favorite hobby. It's like so therapeutic, y'all. If you've never developed your own film, go do it. Webcam done on 12th Street. They sell starter packets at their store. You can order them online. Get into it. It's amazing.
That
So
sounds
anyway, I was developing my own film. I was like working with like I made this whole skirt out of copper wire, which is
I
also
saw that. Yeah.
right. It's like I was doing stuff that I never like. You know, it stretched me. That's why I think school is important. Any type of school because it pushes you outside of your comfort zone. It gets you to do things that you never thought you would be doing. And yeah, so school was awesome. It was frustrating, like I said, because of the way they did our curriculum and the credits and all that. But especially being older, right? So like I'm like 30 in school with like 18-year-olds, right? Which was also really beneficial for me, you know? Like it challenged me in a lot of ways and it allowed me to be like nostalgic, right? Like I could see these kids, like I'm sitting there looking at them like, dang, they don't know what life is like once they get out of this school. Like they think this is hard, like, oh, like I feel so bad for them. But it also like opened me up in a different way, right? And I know this is why I stay around people who are younger than me. Although people think I'm 18 all the time. I
Yeah.
like to stay around people who are younger than me. Like most of my friends are younger than me. Like they're not my age. And I know that also adds to who I am as a person, my
Right.
youthfulness and my joyfulness and my outlook on life. You know what I mean? Um, because that was really, you know, it was vital in school. Like being around a lot of artists that were younger than me who were absolutely amazing. Like, as you know, even for the film that we worked on for Mary Grace,
Yeah.
most of my team was people I went to school with. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like that I remembered. And it was awesome because a lot of these people hadn't even worked on set, which I was shocked about because they're so good at what they do.
Yeah.
Especially Finn. Remember the special effects girl? She's
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely amazing. And we worked on all this stuff in school together. And she never, like, she was like, Alicia, I'm working at like a store, like a pizza shop or a bar. I'm like, girl, you're so good. You need to be on set. The same way
yeah,
Andrea. She's still been in production, but she wasn't working on movies. And so it was like, it even felt good to be able to bring all my, my people back. Like, and
right.
us really work on something. And even you, like, I met you years before, when we started having lunch and connecting in a different way. And so it just, school is important, is like I'm saying. It's like, even the people you meet outside of school, right? Because I feel like I was probably in school when I met you.
You are.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
still in school. That's what I'm saying. But like, just being in that space and being open to these things and connecting and learning from different people, was definitely a part of that school experience. And then outside of what you learn and what it opens you up to is the community, like I'm talking about. So it's the network that school opens you up to that working doesn't always do, right? Because
yeah,
once you go to school, I mean, you're paying for the alumni network, right? You're paying for that alumni network. You're paying for all the people that you're in class with that are going to grow up and be bomb and who are going to
yeah.
think about you and call you like, hey, do you want to come work on this job? You know what I
Right.
mean? So yeah, I think school is just as important as winging it and working in the field. But I think the two combined make you like a powerhouse, to be honest. And even, like I said, even if you can't go to like a university, I think it's still important to find some sort of training and schooling that can just elevate you in various ways. So that's the thing about school. I think school was cool. That was corny, but school was great. School was great.
Yeah. And before we had got cut off, you were talking a little bit about your work that you did with the I Am She art exhibit with artist Imani Shakelin Roberts. Can you tell us a little bit more about that project, how you got involved with it, and like your experience with working on that show?
Okay, y'all. So this is also another thing about network and about maintaining relationships, right? So as everyone knows, I went to Spelman, which is also going to Spelman, and you're at Morehouse too. Like, it's one school.
Yeah.
So one of my best friends from Morehouse, Tau, um, he Imani Shanklin is his little sister, right? So I
Okay.
remember, we go to school together. Everybody graduates, but we're still hanging out. Like, shout out to DC. Like, when I went to Spelman, this is really random, but the closest guy that I could find to like a Philly boy, like that vibe and like that whole thing,
Yeah.
because Philly, nothing's like us. Like, nobody's like us.
Yeah.
And the closest thing I could find was a DC boy. Like, I was like, yo, what is up with DC? Because before that, I had been to DC, but I had never really spent time, in
Right.
DC. So I remember, like, we were just all drawn together. Like, all the DC boys loved all the Philly girls. Like, we just all hung out. Like, we were all cool. And yeah, and so me and Tao were cool, after school and everything. And I remember when I had Caleb, he's like, yo, you gotta meet my sister. Like, y'all are so similar. Like, y'all had these babies. We had kids around the same time. Like, her daughter, I think, is a year younger than Caleb. So, like, we had kids around the same time. And she's an artist. She was living in Brooklyn. And she's so humble, but this girl is absolutely amazing. She's, like, got murals. Like, she has a mural right now in the Bronx on the street, says Black Lives
Oh,
Matter. You understand?
wow.
She also
Yeah.
has been like in the New York libraries. Like, her artwork has been put up in the libraries, and like she's
Wow.
she's absolutely amazing. So yeah, we connected. Like, I remember he like just introduced us via text one day. Like, hey, I actually found. Oh my God, is Imani on here? I think she's not. But it was so crazy. I just found that text the other day, that text thread where he introduced us, which was really wonderful and nostalgic. But um, what happened? Yeah, we were just introduced via Instagram, and then via text, and then I remember she called me in January, and she just told me, like, I was in the car. I remember I'm like on Lincoln Drive in the car, and this is when I was so discouraged, right? This is when I graduated, because I graduated in December. Like, I didn't graduate in May or whatever. Like, I had graduated because I had that extra semester, and I remember being really discouraged, and I was like, yo, I'm not getting anywhere. I was just pissed. I was like, well, what was the point of me going to school? And she invited me. She
Right.
was like, coming up. She's like, I've done it. She's like, I did these 7. So basically, she created 7 life-size portraits of Black women. Very detailed, very beautiful. She's very mixed media as well, which is very similar to my work. And so she requested, like, can you create altars around my work? And I remember I was worried about creating altars, but I told her that I would create. I asked her, was she okay with me creating environments? I said, because I am a set designer and environments are my thing. So instead of doing altars, would you mind if I created pieces of the environments these women would exist in? Because these women were real people, which I actually enjoyed in the paintings that she knew. So yeah, so it was my first time being in a gallery. Like we worked at Weeksville Heritage Center, which is if y'all have not been to Weeksville Heritage Center, you need to go. The actual
Right.
museum is probably closed, but the grounds, I don't know if the grounds are open, but you have to
Wow.
drive past it. Like Weeksville is one of the oldest. It's like Black Wall Street. It's one of the oldest post colonial Black communities that have existed since like the 1800s. And the original houses are still standing. It's been featured in the Pier Moss. It was featured in the Pier Moss runway show last year. Solange also had an event there or whatever. So it's like, it's a special place in the Black community for Black artists, but it doesn't get as much support or as much play as it should. So I actually was really honored to hold space there, because like of course I'm connected to Black history. I love being Black, and I've always been, and I'm about environment. So like I'm super excited about environments where Black people have shared space and have been powerful in times where, like there were pictures in there that like showed during the Great Depression, right? Which is actually really cool. And yeah, we showed there in the month of May. So we were in New York in March, we were in DC in May. And yeah, I'm still honored to be a part of that. And so basically, like I said, we were supposed to have a show in July. So because quarantine shut down, Imani had this brilliant idea where she's like, well, let's speak to these archetypes in reference to the time that we're in, right? Like, how are we embodying being carefree, being a visionary, being all these things in quarantine, right? So this actually really pushed me out my comfort zone, because I always complain about how I never get to work with the photographers I usually want to work with, or I
Right.
don't allow myself to, because that's a whole other thing. But this really challenged me to do that, like to produce, because like I'll produce something beautiful, but then people, like I never get pictures, right? So that's another thing. Please document your work. That's something I really suck at. I'm getting better at it, but as an artist, you should always document your work. And so so I created a 7 like meeting platform, and it was beautiful. It was a really beautiful time of sharing and um just really speaking to the times that we're in, which is the point of art, is to really show the human condition and express things that some people aren't able to express, through our craft and through our art. So yeah, so it was a beautiful experience. And I actually can't wait to be able to produce another show, because frankly, I believe this show will be global, like it will be something that reaches um, other countries and multiple people, because it's a necessary conversation. It was definitely born out of both of our mothering experiences, like becoming a mother and being an
Right.
artist, but also trying to be yourself, but also trying to be this idea of a mother that you thought was real, but it's not.
Yeah.
Um, and even just being a Black woman in our fields, and in the world, right? So it crossed a lot of different, crossed over a lot of different lines, and it created a lot of necessary conversations just about being a woman. So it was good. I think, what was my next? Somebody wrote a question.
Yes. So it was actually Andrea. She wrote, what's your next project that you have coming up?
Wow. So I recently LLC'd my company, Distant Drummer. So it's like I'm all the way official. And I do have a lot of projects that I want to do, just like, on my own, to be honest, like a lot of things that I want to produce. I recently actually booked a few jobs, actually. So I'm actually designing a swimwear showroom
Oh, cool. Congratulations.
right now. Yeah, so I'm really excited for that. I just got a new client. She's a Black swimwear. She's a Black swimwear designer. And I'll totally share her on my page sometime soon. But I'm designing a showroom for her. I also just got called to, I'm designing the day of prayer for my church. So, like now that we're in quarantine, churches are like all live, like everything's streaming. So I'm doing
Yeah.
a stage presence for the day of prayer, which is in August. I also just picked up a commercial at the end of the month. So I'm doing a commercial series with my mentor, Tim Stevens. This is the production designer from Concrete Cowboys. So I'm working with him on a Dropbox. This is another corporate gig. So a Dropbox commercial series that we're doing. And then I'm trying to think. Oh, even today, like this Angry Orchard campaign, that was like a job in itself, which was great. And yeah, I know there's some features coming to town. So, ear to the ground, like trying to see what's going on with that, seeing how I could be involved.
Right.
But at this point, I'm just excited. I'm excited to really develop my business. Like there's a nonprofit I want to start. There's all these different things I want to start, So I feel like this is my time, to be honest, to really start these things. but also take advantage of the work that's around me. Like I said, if I can find some sort of like woodworking class or something that I could be doing during this time to like just sharpen my skill set, that's something I totally want to get into. Even like throwing clay, like just like getting into different materials, you know what I mean, and like seeing the
Yeah.
potential of different materials and how it can be incorporated into my work. um yeah, but I guess those are like my most recent things that are going on. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful.
Right. Cool.
And the other thing I wanted to say though is like
Mhm.
it's interesting that although I freelance, I think it's been good for me to keep a part-time job because
Yeah.
it's literally helped me like with benefits and stuff, right? So like just to be all the
Yeah.
way real, it's like as designers, it's hard for us to get benefits. It costs so much money. And frankly, there should be no shame in like using the government at some point in time, if you really need to. Because I feel like
Yeah.
me keeping that, like the only reason why I'm on unemployment is because I kept that part-time job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
would have
Yeah.
like quit that and been like, oh, I need to be able to do it all myself. I don't need anything else. You know how people get. It's just like, no, humble yourself and know you need that. You know what I mean? And like
Right.
take advantage of it and be okay with it because it's temporary. So yeah, so like I'm not working my part-time job right now because it's closed, but that's
Yeah.
also in the same vein, right? So like I work at an interior design firm that's also a home staging company, that's also a boutique moving management company. So like I'm still doing like set design at my part-time job. They also have a
Right.
store, so I do visual merchandising for the store. I run the
Oh,
social media. I do social media for the store. So like there's all these ways that I'm still doing my work
right.
within my part-time job, but which has blessed me tremendously, especially during a time like this. Because a lot of my
Yeah.
freelance friends are like, "How are you even getting this?" I'm like, "Girl, because I kept my part-time job. Like,
Yeah.
it's like it's that easy. You know what I mean?" Hey, Megan. Y'all should also hit up Botanic Village. She's an amazing. She makes these like amazing skincare products, and she has a beautiful little boy. So check her out too. But go ahead.
Cool. I was going to just say the last question before we wrap up is how did you come up with the name Distant Drummer?
Oh my
What
God, that's such a good question.
Yeah, so like for those who don't know like the meaning behind it, how could you describe it?
So distant drummer. So the distant drummer is a familiar story, right? So it's a part of culture, like in folklore. It's from Henry David Thoreau. So in one of his books, I think it was either Into the Woods or Walden, where he talks about the drummer in the field. Like the drummers in the field, you're kind of to yourself. You're not like everybody else. You're kind of beating to your own drum, right? Which is kind of cliche and really generic, but it's a real thing. And one of the quotes that spoke to me, I think I have it posted somewhere on my page. It was the whole notion of like not feeling the need to keep up with your companions, right? And being comfortable with beating to your own drum. And I remember when I was in school, so I got introduced to this idea when I was at CCP, right? And I remember being so frustrated, right? Because this was during the time all my friends were moving to LA, all my friends were moving to New York and overseas, and they were doing all this amazing work. And I felt like trash. I'm like, why am I over
Yeah.
here and all of my friends are doing all this stuff and they're so great, and I'm over here corny in Philly not doing nothing, right? And frankly, I
Yeah.
wasn't corny, but you think like that. You think you're less than
Right.
because you're not making all these moves. But sometimes making moves gets you lost. Like that's what I've
Right.
learned. It's like sometimes it really is about hunkering down, staying still, letting God or whatever you believe in, higher power guide you, right? For me, it's the Lord. Letting
Mm-hmm.
God guide me and guide my steps and really waiting, right? I think because we're a part of this culture that we're in, we're so rushed for everything. We need
Yes.
fame now. We need success now. We need this now. It's just like, it's just like, it's not real and it's not as rewarding if it's something that you don't have to necessarily wait for. So, which I learned,
Yeah.
right? Like even during that time, that's why that quote spoke to me because it's like, dang, like I really feel like I got to keep up with people and I don't want to feel like that. I want to be comfortable with where I'm at. So it's very interesting. Like I tell people all the time, I almost feel like I've grown into my brand. You know what I mean? Because like even
Yeah.
during that time, I wasn't there yet. Like I wasn't comfortable not keeping up with my companions, but I was just like, I want to feel that and I want to know that. So I'm going to hold on to this quote and I'm going to embody this. So then furthermore, so just hearing that, right, was like, okay, cool, whatever. So then I'm sitting in I will never forget, a society and mass communications class, right? And my teacher starts telling us about this newspaper called The Different Drummer. No, The Distant Drummer. Because what you have to understand is that story is The Different Drummer, right? Not distant.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in class and he's telling us about this newspaper called the Distant Drummer. And I'm like, yo, that's kind of hot. Like, what is this, man? What is this? What was this? So it was a newspaper based in Philadelphia in the 60s. It was run by hippies, right? So it talked about like all the taboo topics, you know, race and sex and, you know, all the things like people didn't want to really talk about, right? Like free love and all that stuff. And yeah, it was an awesome newspaper. And frankly, it was so crazy. I saw a copy. I had never seen a copy of it in my life, and I actually want to own a copy of it. But it was crazy because I saw there's a museum on 7th and Chestnut. I'm also like a museum. I love museums. And that's another part of my career, which I'll talk about, is like doing museum curating, which is something I'm going to like segue into in my career, which I've already started doing. Like when I was at, you know, Weeksville Heritage Center and like, you know, these different gallery spaces, I already see how it's manifesting. But back to the different drummers. So I go to the Philadelphia History Museum, which is on 7th and Chestnut. Don't know if it'll ever open again because of Corona, but if it does, everybody should go. Because it gives a really wonderful history of Philadelphia, like the less about like, you know, George Washington, you know, like less about like the history of like Philadelphia, like old city sense, but more about like just our culture and like who we are as a people in Philadelphia. And they have a copy of The Distant Drummer in there.
Oh, wow.
And I died. I was like, I've never seen this in my life. It was just like really wonderful to see it. And frankly, those two things go together, right? It's like I'm not a normal person, right? Like I'm not a regular person. Like I would have been a hippie if I was around in the 60s. And the fact is, oh my God, Black hippie art, right? You connect. So right, I would have totally been a hippie. And the fact is, you know, those two went so well together. Like Distant Drummer just felt right, you know, like me being from Philly and, you know, really connecting with the whole idea of like really trying not to keep up with other people and being comfortable with my own pace of doing things. Yeah, it all like kind of came together. So I just kind of adapted it. And then I put the 3 R's in the end to represent rare. We're rare. Like Distant Drummers are not like everybody else. We're ruggedly elegant because that's totally my aesthetic. Like I'm very rough around the edges, but I create some of the most beautiful things. But I hate things that are perfect. You know, I don't think that's real life. Like things are always worn, always rough. Like the best things in life are worn, right? Like this is why I always vintage, because the best things in life have been worn over and over again. And so I definitely incorporate that into my work. Like people call me, I'm still getting used to it and not being insecure about it. But people actually call me to make a mess. Like people enjoy that I'm good at making a mess, right? Like even for concrete, he's like, yo, I need you because you're good at like making stuff look dirty and worn and like making your space look like it's been lived in for years. And I just put it together, you know? So that's the regularly elegant. And then the radical, you know, we're radical about change, right? We're radical about changing ourselves and the growth that's necessary in self and also in our communities, you know? And so, yeah. So that is where Distant Drummer came from. And like I said, I feel like it's a brand that I really grew into. I'm very proud of it and I'm really excited. Like I said, I recently LLC'd it. So I'm about to be, you know, just look out for a lot of things that'll be happening, not necessarily right away. You know, I'm still and conceptualizing, but you know, in the future, I'm just really excited to grow this brand into a business, you know, and a nonprofit, because there's a lot of ways that I do want to, you know, give back to Philly and my community and the artists in my city and the less fortunate, you know, people. It's all about access, right? Like I want to give access to people who don't have access to many things, and so. Yeah, so I'm grateful and I'm blessed, but that's how it came to be. Yeah.
Cool. Mm-hmm. And you touched a little bit on like working in museums and stuff. So what are some of the future goals do you want to do within your career?
Well, yeah, being a museum curator. So I actually recently interviewed for the curatorial assistant position at the African American Museum of Philadelphia, because I feel like, yeah, that's one of the museums, right? Like we went there when we were kids for like field trips. Sorry, y'all. I'm like, oh, man. Field trips and stuff, but like after that you never hear about it, right? It never gets no play. Like I just feel like Philly was so vital in history, right? In American history, let alone Black history. Like people don't even realize, you know, like in the 1800s, Philadelphia was like predominantly Black. You know what I mean? Like we've always been like a Black city, and Black people have contributed to the success of this city. And I feel like the museum just doesn't get enough play. It's not visible enough. It's been there my whole entire life. It's right in Chinatown. You know what I mean? And people don't even know it exists. So I would love to work for that museum. I would love to make it a museum for us, right? Like our work should be in that museum. Like Philadelphia Black artists should be in that museum. And frankly, they have the potential to be like the Brooklyn Museum, right? That's become like a hub
Right.
for minority artists in New York City, right? And I feel like the African American Museum could be in that, you know, on that same level. So I was
Right.
really excited. I went for my interview. It was actually the best interview I've ever had in my life. Like, because I've never interviewed with Black people. That's the other thing I
Yeah.
realized. I was like, yo, I'm always interviewing with white people, which means I never feel like I can be myself. You know what I mean? I always got to turn it
Yeah.
on for them, you know, the
Right.
talk and everything, you know, the code switch, everything we got to do. And just to get a job, make sure my hair is straight and, you know, the whole thing. And this
Right.
interview was just so free. You know what I mean? Like, we laughed together, we cried together. It was just like, it was crazy.
Awesome.
So, but I didn't get the job, right? So I didn't get the job. And it's very interesting. I didn't get the job, and I'm actually
Mm.
still waiting to hear back from the head curator because you know, when I don't get jobs, people hate this. But when I don't get jobs, I have meetings to find out why I didn't get the job. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's always hilarious because people are really uncomfortable. They don't want to talk about it, all this stuff. But I can't wait to have that meeting, you know, because like this is something that I really want, right? Like I know that
Yeah.
I'm already a curator. That's already what I do. It's just in a different space than a museum, you know. But yeah, that is like some of the next steps I want to take, you know. But that's what I mean. Like that's why I feel like I don't know if I want to get in the union, right? Because it's like I have the freedom to do all these things because I'm not in the union. Like even
Yeah.
being here in Philly with all these films, like Philly's becoming a film hub again, like it used to be like 10
Yeah.
years ago. It's interesting to meet people on set because they're so happy that I'm not in the union because then they can hire
Mm-hmm.
me for other stuff. You know what I mean? Like because
Right.
half the people they're working with on set they can't hire for other stuff because it's a, you know, it's like a conflict of interest or whatever. So
Right.
I feel like I'm starting to see how not being in the union is actually like a little bit of a one up for me, and it allows me to slip in and out of different industries and still like do, you know, what I got to do and not rely on just being in the union to like make me successful. Because frankly, that's a club in itself, right? That's a good old boys
Yeah.
club too. So it's kind of like, as a Black woman, it might take me freaking years to even get in, but why put my career on hold because of that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, so yeah.
Cool. So, before we wrap up, is there any other ways, things you want to promote? Do you want to promote your social media? Where can they find your work? Just tell them like
So,
how to connect with you.
so y'all can connect with me anyway. I'm, you know, at Distant Drummer on Instagram. You can write me anytime. I'm like always talking to people. I love it. You can go to my website. I do have to update it. That's another thing. I'm dragging my feet on updating, but we're gonna get it together. So need to update that. But you can totally see my work there. And frankly, if you just want to shoot me an email and want to see some stuff or you want to have a conversation, I'm always down to talk. I'm always down to meet up. Ask Kiana. Like she hit me up randomly. Like,
Yeah.
hey girl, can we go to lunch? Can we talk? And I'm like, yeah, girl, let's go. So I'm always down for meetups, even social distancing meetups. I like picnics. I like all those things. So yeah, so hit me up, y'all. But thank y'all so much for this time. This was like I was telling Kiana earlier, I had a really tricky day emotionally, and this was really I needed this, you know, without even knowing that I needed it. It's always good to speak to stuff I've done in the past, to speak to how far I've come, because you forget, you know, you really forget. Like I even at the beginning of quarantine, I did a whole board of like all the brands I've worked with or worked for, just like their
Yeah.
logos, just for me, like, you know, and it was so empowering to see that because I'm like, yo, I really forget like the work I put in,
Yeah.
the time
Yeah.
I put in, because Instagram will make you feel crazy, right? Because I'm not really a poster like that. Like I'm not posting everything. Like I said, I haven't even updated my website. But it's like
Right.
because we're in this type of culture where people think like, oh, it's not real unless it's on Instagram. It's like, yo, I got so much real work that's not on Instagram, and that's also
Right.
okay. But you know, you need those reminders, you know, so that you're not like caught up with, yeah, like the way other people want to think. So yeah, thank you for this. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the people who watched, even the people who left because we were having technical difficulties. I'm grateful for y'all.
Yeah.
All my friends that was reminding me of stuff while I was talking. I love y'all. So yeah, thank you, Kiana. And I'm excited for your whole series.
Yeah.
Like who are actually
Thank you.
what are you doing after this? Like who are you interviewing next?
Well, so after this, for next Thursday, I'm actually going to be partnering with a company called Venture Cafe Philadelphia. They're
Awesome.
actually a co-working space, on, I believe, 36 in Market
Oh
Street.
nice.
And yeah, so every Thursday, they will have these like networking events with like different artists and different entrepreneurs in the city, and they would do different series and lightning talks.
Awesome.
So I'm going to be doing an artist talk with the artist by the name of, I believe it's Dorsey. I hope I'm pronouncing
Nice.
it right if you're watching it. So we will be actually doing an interview with him next
Awesome.
Thursday at 5:45 to 6:30. That will be in Zoom, but out in the bio for
Okay,
that.
good.
And then also I have the Thursday after that, the July 23rd, back
Okay.
here on Instagram Live. I'm going to be interviewing someone by the name of Lexus, who has a company called Crocheted Couture, and she does
Nice.
different like outfits out of
Oh, I'm about
crucified
to watch
crochet.
them.
Yeah,
I
so
love
she
a
does
crochet.
hats. Yeah, awesome. So
Does she do like
that's the
bikinis,
artist.
like bras? She does like
Yeah,
little
she does bikinis, dresses, hats,
dresses.
minis,
Oh yeah, I'm gonna see
dresses.
it. I want it. I
Yeah.
want it. All right. Okay.
So, yeah, and I just started this series just to talk to different Black creatives and artists, mostly in Philadelphia, because, like you
Yeah.
said, I
Mhm.
feel like when people think of like arts and culture, they always go to either LA or New York. But we
Yeah.
have so much talent here, and I always said that we can have like our own little like Renaissance, like art Renaissance
We
here,
can. Yeah.
if we just like promote it and work hard and like work together.
Yeah.
So I wanted to like start small, definitely with just Black Hippie art. That's the reason why I started. Black Hippie art is just to like promote Black artists and artists of color, and even women artists, because I feel like within the art scene and like even with me doing costume design, it wasn't a lot of like
Yeah.
Black creatives that's
Wow.
in that space.
Yep.
So yeah, I just want to do these artist talks, and if you guys know any artists that you would like to see interviews or like be highlighted, or if you yourself is an artist and want to be highlighted, just let me know. You can DM me
Mhm.
or email me at blackyartco@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kiana. I appreciate you.
Thank you again.
I love
No
you,
problem.
Kaya. I love you, Andrea. Y'all are like my last two people. I love y'all. Y'all stayed the whole
Thank you.
time.
Yeah. And thank you guys again for coming back and watching the talk. I am going to try to like piece together a recap video and post
Okay.
it here and on a YouTube video. So
Oh, that
I'm
would be
starting to start a
great,
YouTube channel.
Kiana.
So yeah, I'm going to like try to download all the videos and make a recap video. So if you did miss it, or if there's some parts that you missed because of
I
the
would love to just
difficulties,
hear
I'll
it.
have it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely like save all the videos and then repost the recap. So
Thank
once
you.
again, thank you so much. And I
Of
hope you
course.
guys have a good night, and thank you. Peace.
Thank you. Bye.